Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. And on today's video, we're going to be digging into Asics daily trainer line. And look, I know it can be very confusing when you go on and you want to buy a new daily trainer and you know you're a fan of Asics, but they have so many shoes seemingly do very similar things. Well, hopefully I'm going to get this cleared up today, because today we're going to be talking about the Asics Gel-Nimbus 27, the Asics Gel-Cumulus 27, and the Novablast 5. Let's get into it. Before we get started, I do just want to say that this video is in collaboration with my friends over at Roadrunner Sports. Now, Roadrunner Sports was good enough to send me the Nimbus, the Cumulus, and the Novablast for the purpose of review. However, they haven't told me what to say. They don't have any editorial privileges, and all the thoughts and opinions are my own. With that said, if you are thinking of picking up a pair of the Nimbus, Cumulus, or Novablast, I will place links in the show notes below so you can head on over to Roadrunner Sports and pick up what you want. Now, I think the best place to start is with price, and we will start with the Novablast 5. You're going to be able to pick up a pair of the Novablast 5 for $140. Moving right along to the Cumulus 27, you are also going to be able to pick up a pair of the Cumulus 27 for $140. So right off the bat, I know it's very confusing. We have two $140 shoes that ultimately are neutral daily trainers, but we'll dig into the differences. Stand by. Moving right along, we have Asics top of the line premium daily trainer with the Nimbus, and this will cost you $165. And we will talk a bit about why this is so much more expensive, $25 more than both the Cumulus and the Novablast. And the first part is because of stack height. Now, stack height is the amount of foam you have underneath your foot, measuring from the bottom of your foot to the ground. Now, the Gel-Nimbus 27 has different versions for men and women. And in the women's version, we have 42.5 in the heel, 34.5 in the forefoot, and in the men's version, they just add a millimeter. So we have 43.5 in the heel, 35.5 in the forefoot, both for an 8mm drop. Moving over to the Cumulus 27. By the way, these are long franchises, right? They've each been around for 27 years. Now, the Cumulus 27 is the same as the Nimbus in that there is a women's version and a men's version. And in the women's version, we have 37.5 in the heel, 29.5 in the forefoot. And in the men's version, exactly the same as the Nimbus, we add a millimeter. We have 38.5 in the heel, 30.5 in the forefoot for an 8mm drop. And then moving over to the Novablast 5, the stack height of the Novablast 5 is a little more than the Cumulus, a little less than the Nimbus. And there is no difference between the men's and the women's version. So we have 41.5 in the heel, 33.5 in the forefoot, also for an 8mm drop. So all shoes have the same drop of 8mm. And just in case you were wondering, the drop is the difference between the stack height in the heel to the stack height in the forefoot. Now, weight is a big thing when it comes to shoes, but it's not everything. And just because a shoe is heavier doesn't mean it's going to be more difficult to run in. But because I have the Novablast 5 in my hands, we'll start there. Asics claims that in a US men's size 9, the Novablast 5 will tip the scale at 9 ounces even, or 255 grams. However, in my size, a US men's size 13, it tips the scale at 10.7 ounces or 303 grams. Moving on to the Cumulus 27. In a US men's size 9, Asics says that the Cumulus 27 will tip the scale at 9.3 ounces or 267 grams. However, in my size, again a 13, it'll tip the scale at 11.4 ounces or 324 grams. So for me, the Cumulus weighs 21 grams more than my size in the Novablast 5. Moving down the line to the top of the line, Nimbus 27. And in a US men's size 9, the Nimbus 27 will tip the scale at 10.8 ounces or 305 grams. And in my size, a 13, the Nimbus 27 tips the scale at 13.1 ounces or 372 grams. So the difference in daily trainers between the most heavy and the least heavy shows that the Nimbus 27 is 69 grams more in my size than the Novablast 5. Now, all three shoes here are using an engineered mesh upper. I have run a lot in all three shoes and I haven't had an issue with breathability. I think they all breathe very well. However, with that said, I think the upper on the Novablast 5 is the lightest. Now, I don't think it's the lightest, I know it's the lightest. And out of the three, it is the only one that when I hold it up to a light, I can actually see inside the upper. And of course, that thin upper is definitely contributing to the lower weight of the Novablast 5. Now, let's talk about some padding around the heel collar, because these are all daily trainers and they are built for comfort. Now, I would say, if you were blindfolded, each of these shoes has a lovely step-in feel. When you step into all three of these, they feel very plush, they feel quite soft, but the padding around the heel collar of the Nimbus 27 is head and shoulders above that of the Cumulus and the Novablast. It is just screaming quality. And of course, that would be expected because this is $25 more than the Cumulus and the Novablast. But we have a good amount of padding that is recessed from the top. We have a knit upper coming around the top, and then the padding is a bolster that just feels very tight and very nice. Now, this knit upper just feeds nicely into this heel pull right on the back, which is also knit, and then the tongue on the Nimbus 27 is also a stretchy knit material. And in addition to this heel pull on the back, we also have the tongue pull on the front, and the tongue on the Nimbus 27 27 is actually the most breathable out of all three because it's this stretchy knit. It is aerated the whole way down. Now, let's just move on to the heel collar on the Cumulus 27, and you can see, yeah, there's a lot of padding here. Now, while it is still quite thick around the heel collar, it is not quite as thick as that of the Nimbus. And I would say that is just because of the step down in quality. Now, when I'm saying it's a step down in quality, I don't think it's something that you're going to notice when you're on the run. So I don't want you to think that you're buying an inferior product. And it's really only when you compare the two that you see how much of a higher quality the Nimbus is. But we'll continue with the Cumulus. The padding of the heel collar is not recessed on the Cumulus, but we do have a knit heel pull here on the back, and we do have a tongue pull right on the top of the tongue. Now, in the Cumulus 26, Asics was using a stretchy knit tongue, but for the Cumulus 27, they have done away with the stretchy knit tongue, and we have a more typical tongue. It's not too thin, but there is a little more padding than there is on the knit tongue on the Nimbus. So perhaps if you do suffer from a little bit of lace bite across the top of your foot, perhaps the tongue on the Cumulus could work better for you. However, on the downside, it's not quite as aerated as that knit tongue, so may not be quite as breathable. Coming down the line to the Novablast 5, and I'm going to hold it up again. And yes, now this is the same price as the Cumulus 27, and we can see we have a lot of padding coming around this heel collar. Now, the padding on the Novablast 5 is it's quite a bit thicker than that of the Cumulus 27. However, the padding around the heel collar does not feel as tight. It's not packed as much into the upper. Take that for what it's worth. That's just an observation. The step-in feel and the heel comfort of the Novablast 5 is just as nice as the Cumulus. Now, if we do come around to the back, we can see that Asics has included a heel pull, but it's not a nice knit heel pull the way we have on the Cumulus and the Nimbus. It's just a nylon heel pull. And I mean, I suppose it does the same thing, right? You're going to use that to pull the shoe on. The tongue on the Novablast 5 is very similar to that of the Cumulus. There is some strategic padding to stop any lace bite, and we do have a tongue pull right on the top in case you wanted to use both to help get the shoe on. Now, as far as the overlays go, we're continuing with reasons why the Novablast 5 is the lightest. We have the Asics branding on the lateral and medial side, but it's sublimated into the upper. We have an underlay coming around the toe box, and then some reinforcement along the eyelet chain, with the lower 4 eyelets being a shock cord type material. Now, if we move over to the Cumulus 27, Asics is actually using an overlay for this on both the lateral and the medial side. We have the same overlay coming around the toe box and the reinforcements along the eyelet chain with a more typical eyelet chain setup. Moving over to the Nimbus, and again, Asics has gone with the actual overlay of their logo on the lateral and medial side. The underlay around the toe box of the Nimbus is just, again, it seems a slightly higher quality. It seems slightly higher at the front, and then along the eyelet chain, Asics has included the reinforcements, but they've also included the shock cord eyelets as well. It's a nice look. Now, let's come down to the midsole materials, because Asics is using a different midsole material in each of these shoes. For the Nimbus 27, Asics is using their Flight Foam Blast Plus Eco. For the Gel-Cumulus 27, Asics is using their Flight Foam Blast Plus, and for the Novablast 5, Asics is using the Flight Foam Blast Max. Now, if we come down to the outsole, we're going to start with the Novablast 5, and Asics is using their AHA Low outsole rubber. AHA, of course, stands for Asics High Abrasion Rubber, and we'll get to that in just a second. But up here, Asics is calling this pattern, this outsole rubber pattern, trampoline inspired, and it's supposed to give you extra bounce in every step. Now, both the Cumulus and the Nimbus don't have that trampoline inspired outsole, so if you like bouncing on trampolines, maybe the Novablast is the right shoe for you. Moving on to the Cumulus 27, and this is a little different. Now, for the Cumulus 27, Asics is using their Fluid Ride rubberized EVA outsole, so there is no outsole rubber. Basically, Asics takes an EVA midsole foam, they mix rubber into it, and then they put it on the bottom of the shoe. And I'm actually a big fan of this. I like how a shoe with a rubberized EVA really feels underfoot. Now, the thing about a rubberized EVA outsole is that it's going to look like it's not wearing as well as an actual outsole rubber. And that's because a rubber compound is going to stand up to a lot more punishment, a lot more abrasion. But you'll notice if I hold up the Cumulus 27 that we have a big chunk of this Fluid Ride rubberized EVA outsole. A lot more than if we just had regular outsole rubber. I mean, I would say there's 10 times as much. So all that to say, even though your Fluid Ride outsole may look like it's wearing down, it still has a lot of life left. And if you like the feel of a rubberized EVA outsole underfoot, I'd say go with it, because the Fluid Ride outsole is not going to last any less time than a shoe with normal outsole rubber on the bottom. Now let's move over to the Nimbus 27. You can see we have a lot of exposed midsole foam here, but Asics is using their most premium outsole rubber on the Nimbus 27. They're using hybrid Asics grip and AHA Plus. Of course, this AHA Plus is right here in the high impact area, right here on your lateral heel edge, and the hybrid Asics grip everywhere else. Guys, I've got to say, this rubber is holding up surprisingly well. It really is an excellent compound. Now, just because of where I live, I don't get a chance to run in the rain very often, so I cannot give you a first-hand experience over which outsole actually grips the best. To me, they all grip equally well. But I would also say that I think this rubberized EVA outsole is just really sticky. Even on dry roads, it feels like it's sticking me to the ground very well. Next up, I'd say the Nimbus with the hybrid Asics grip and the AHA Plus is going to be the next grippiest outsole. And then finally, the Novablast 5 with the AHA low rubber. So let's talk about ride. Because if you are on the fence between the Nimbus, the Cumulus and the Novablast, maybe this is going to push you off in the direction of one or the other. Now, overall, the softest ride goes to the Novablast 5 with the Flightfoam Blast Max midsole foam. This is very soft, very spongy. Now, I don't want to steer you away because I really like the softness of the Novablast 5. I think it is soft, I think it's responsive, and generally I do favor a softer midsole foam. Now, the next level of softness, we're going to jump right ahead to the Nimbus 27. Of course, that has the Flightfoam Blast Plus Eco. And again, it is very soft, it is quite responsive, and there is a lot of it underfoot. Remember, in the men's version, we have 43.5 millimeters here in the heel. So this is going to provide a lot of underfoot protection. And the whole package just rolls very nicely. And then while we're talking about firmness, out of these three, the Cumulus 27 is going to be the firmest ride, but again, it is in no way a firm ride. In fact, I've already said that I enjoy running in a shoe with a rubberized EVA outsole. I think the Fluid Ride outsole really gives some personality to the Cumulus. And even though it is slightly firmer than the Novablast or the Nimbus, it's a real treat to run in. And I have to make this clear, in no way is this a firm riding shoe. It's still soft, it's just not as soft as the Novablast and the Nimbus. So, you might be wondering now, like if I haven't persuaded you to one or the other, you may be wondering what is each of these shoes' best use case scenario. And we're going to start with the Nimbus 27 at the top of the line. This is the pinnacle. This is the best, most premium daily trainer that Asics makes, and this is going to be your comfortable cruiser. This is going to be the shoe that you put on when you want to feel baby. Now, I'd say you can run as long as you like in the Nimbus 27 because there is just so much comfort that's built in, and it's cocooning you and just encouraging you to keep going. Now, because it is slightly heavier than the other two shoes, that is going to be an issue for some people, but of course, because of the geometry, it carries its weight very well. The Nimbus 27 is a real treat to run in. However, it wouldn't be my first choice if we were going to be picking up the pace. But for those daily miles, the Nimbus 27 is where it's at. Moving down to the Cumulus 27, we've got a slightly lower stack height compared to the Nimbus and compared to the Novablast, but we still have a relatively high stack height. For the men's version, we have 38.5 millimeters in the heel. And in my testing of the Cumulus 27, I did go out and knock out a 20 miler, and I had no issues at all. The shoe was taking care of me. It felt really good underfoot. But I think at least if we're comparing the three models, I'm going to say that the Cumulus 27 is probably going to be best for those mid-range mileage runs that you do. It's definitely a shoe that you can use every day. Of course, it is a daily trainer, and I found that the Cumulus 27 picks up the pace substantially better than the Nimbus 27, and that is partially to do with this Fluid Ride midsole, because it's just a little firmer, and when you have a slightly firmer midsole, it gives you more of a ground feel, and you want to pick up the pace a little more. Now, even though the Novablast 5 has the softest midsole compound with the Flightfoam Blast Max, this would be my choice if you wanted to run the fastest out of all the three. And that is mainly a product of the weight of the shoe. Because it is so light, it's very easy to get those legs turning over. It's also highly protective because it's so soft and we have such a big stack height. And because we have such a big stack height, it's also going to be protective in the long run. Now, for me personally, I think maybe I would pick one of these two for a long run over the Novablast 5, but that's only because when I'm going and I'm running long, I want something just slightly firmer and more protective. But I guarantee there's a lot of people out there that are using the Novablast 5 for all their runs, long runs, speed runs. And out of the three, I'm going to say the Novablast 5 is the most versatile. It's going to cover the most number of runs that anyone's going to do. But also there's a clear separation in the level of quality between the Novablast and the Cumulus and the Nimbus. Now, out of the three, I think I like the Flightfoam Blast Plus midsole foam the best, but overall the Novablast 5 seems the lowest quality, at least in my opinion. We step up a little bit with the Cumulus, and then we take a big leap forward with the Nimbus 27. So now I want to hear from you. Have you run in any of the Nimbus, the Cumulus, or the Novablast through the years? Which one would you consider picking up? Definitely drop a comment and let me know. But for now, it's Matt B. This has been an Asics daily trainer shootout between the Nimbus 27, the Cumulus 27, and the Novablast 5. Be kind, be happy, run well. See you in a couple of days.